Hey, are you more safe today than you were 4 years ago? This is a great question. Hey, we're here in Tucson, Arizona, close to the border in Nogales, Arizona, Nogales, Mexico. And I am super privileged that I have got artdelcueto with me. And Art has been a Border Patrol agent for over 20 years. He knows some of the most powerful political people in this country that want public safety and national security. And so, Art, thank you so much for being with us today.
Really happy to be here.
This is awesome. I am so glad we can do this. And I know you just had an interview before this, and so thank you so much to take the time out to let our people, our subs and our followers and our fans about the border. So border wars, like what's going on at the border?
So I want to thank you right off the bat because you're out here in Arizona. Most of the attention goes to Texas.
That's right, yep.
But you're doing the right thing, and I mean, you have subscribers and you have people, and I urge people, like when they see this show and when they see your channel, don't just subscribe and share it and tell your friends to subscribe, because people, they need to know, and that's what we're about. We're about educating. Like you said, you know, I've been with the Border Patrol for over 20 years. I've been in law enforcement for close to 30 years in the state of Arizona. So I've been in the state of Arizona the whole time because of my position with the National Border Patrol Council. I've been blessed and have had the, the privilege to see the border from San Diego to Florida.
Wow.
So I've seen the entire southern border. It's been revealing, and it's an eye opener. And I think there's a lot of things that are going on out there that the public doesn't understand.
There's a man that's going to help you a lot on the border, too. He's a fantastic friend of mine, artdelcueto. Border Patrol, the head of Border Patrol. Where is Art? He's a good guy, too. He's been my friend along with a couple of our other friends that for a long time. I appreciate it, Art. We won't forget it, Art. Thank you, man. Thank you. Thank everybody else, too, Art.
And when it comes to Arizona, per se, Arizona is the only area, when you look at Tucson sector of the Border Patrol, it's the only area that from Douglas Station, which is the station that's furthest east, all the way to Ajo Station, which is the one that's furthest west. Every single thing you see in the rest of the southern border, you're going to see it in Arizona alone.
Wow.
So you can go to Texas and see the river.
Sure.
But you can come to Arizona and you'll find an area where there's water. You'll find an area.
Okay.
So Arizona, the area of the border, has all the problems. And then we have the particular thing that I always talk about is the Tohono O'odham Reservation. You're looking at 60 plus linear miles there with Mexico, that there is so much lawlessness, and a lot of it is because you have different laws on the reservation itself. So it limits the way that agents are able to protect the border. So it's been fascinating seeing everything that's happening, but it's also been heartbreaking. It's been very heartbreaking.
So Art, tell us, like, we've had 4 years of the Biden administration. We're going into the Trump administration. And I know you've had conversations with President Trump. You've been to the border with him. Tom Homan, the border czar, just recently. J.D. Vance, correct? And what's the sentiment? Like, how are we going to move from chaos and an insecure border to now a more organized and structured, we're going to follow the laws of our land type of a border?
Right, so it's difficult. And I'm going to tell you why it's difficult, because there's so many people that have their own agenda, right?
Oh, sure.
And then the mainstream media, their agenda has always and will be, hey, who's paying the advertisement and who's got...
Exactly.
So they're going to have their own message out there. But I think the people that suffer is the American public. And yeah, for the last 4 years, we've had a lot of chaos, because we've dealt with an administration that they didn't change immigration laws. The people don't get that. When President Trump was in office, he didn't change immigration laws. What changes is the policies and the way you enforce certain things.
Okay.
And under the current administration, it's just pretty much chaotic. And the best way I could describe it is handing the keys to a brand new sports car to a child that doesn't have a driver's license.
Wow.
And that's what this administration pretty much has done. Unfortunately, the keys are the keys to the front door of America, and the sports car is, the drugs that are coming into the United States, and the people that are driving is not a 16-year-old kid, but it's criminal cartels. And when you talk about criminal cartels, people focus in on the fentanyl, the heroin, the methamphetamine, all which is coming through our borders. But criminals deal with other criminals. They're all about making money. So the criminal cartels that were bringing in drugs, they realized how much money can be made off of the human trafficking.
Wow.
So you have the human traffickers that are on our southern border that have to pay, you would say, almost a toll to the drug smugglers. So the drug smugglers say, okay, you bring a group across, and the drug smuggler will say, you have to hold that group in Mexico, and you're going to cross them where I tell you to cross, when I tell you to cross.
Interesting.
And they'll utilize humans as a distraction so they can ultimately get their drugs into the U.S. So it goes hand in hand. And that's, I think, the difficult part is the media and politicians, they say, well, human trafficking, it's these poor kids that are coming across. Okay, but is it just poor kids that are coming across? Or are those kids having to make deals with drug smugglers?
Exactly.
Are their parents abandoning these kids at the hands of the drug smugglers? Some parents that are already in the United States have abandoned their children in other countries. Now their countries under these kids under the last 4 years have tried to come into the country. How do they do it? Because the parents here have to make deals with the drug smugglers.
Wow.
So it is just an ever-evolving circle.
I can't believe it. So here in Tucson, we are so close to Mexico. So we have most of these drugs and these criminals and these cartels coming through here, staying here, or going to Phoenix, right? Because Phoenix is the 5th largest city in the U.S. So here in Tucson and all along the border, is there anything that we can do?
So this is a hub. Unfortunately, this has become a hub. They money laundering and everything else you can think of happens in Tucson, and it's become the main hub where the drugs are coming in and people are getting smuggled. And you have the stash houses, though you don't see the stash houses like you used to anymore, because under the last 4 years, it's just been so easy to come to the U.S., ask for asylum, knowing you're going to get released.
Wow.
But the stash houses now are where the drugs get stored. So that's where everything gets stored.
Interesting.
And I think what I tell people is just be vigilant. You have to remain vigilant. One line that I've used up to a billion times, and I had the privilege of President Trump using it once during one of his addresses to the nation, was, I don't lock my door at night because I hate the people outside.
Okay.
I lock my door at night because I love the people inside. And the same thing happens to
awesome.
our borders. And that's what you have to do. You have to be really vigilant. If you see something in your neighborhood that just something's not right. Like I said, I've been in law enforcement for close to 30 years in the state of Arizona. So when I see something, maybe my spidey sense is a little different than most.
Exactly, yeah.
But everyone has that. Everyone has that, the hairs that stand up in the back of their neck. If you sense something is weird, then something is weird.
Yeah.
And look into it and notify authorities and let them take care of it. That's the big one, is let them take care of it. So I think that's what it's going to take. It's going to take a group effort. We all want to live in a secure country.
Exactly.
I don't care what side of the aisle. I've said it before. Immigration should not have anything to do with political party. And it doesn't. Immigration means security of our nation's borders. And I've seen people on the left. I've seen people on the right. At the end of the day, they want to be secure in America.
Absolutely.
That's how simple it is.
Yeah, I mean, don't we have public safety and national security, right? And I mean, anywhere we go, whether we click a seatbelt in or whether we're in the shower and we pull the shower curtain, don't we want to be safe?
Yes.
Like common sense, it seems to be a disappearing thing with some people, just because they are so left or so right, or they just have this agenda or follow the money, right?
The problem is it's become a racial issue.
Oh, racial,
People
yeah.
want to talk about race.
Exactly.
And that's what it is. I say it, race is not, illegal is not a race. It has nothing to do with race. Something that people don't know and they don't get informed enough about is under the last 4 years of the Biden administration, DHS Border Patrol has reported that they've made arrests of people from over 168 different countries.
Wow.
Over 168 different countries.
Okay, so
that's not just Mexicans you're arresting.
So why do people want to come to the U.S.? Can we just break it down? Like, why are people coming here? Why aren't we flocking to Mexico and to Cuba?
A big deal. Right, let's be honest. The economy is a big deal. They realize that they can come to the United States, make more money than what they're making in their country.
Okay.
But what happens when you do that? Then you realize that people, they don't want to migrate to the United States. They want to be temporary residents of America.
Interesting.
Where
Why?
they're able to send money back.
Oh,
you
right.
get people all the time that
Right.
say, well, I'm going to go to the United States, make money, send it back, build
Uh-huh.
my own stuff in Mexico, and then I want to go back.
Uh-huh.
And that's always been the thing that's been used. Like, I grew up on the southern border, okay?
Yeah.
So I was born in Mexico.
Uh-huh.
I grew up on the border. I was raised on the border. I've
Interesting.
lived my whole life on the border.
Okay.
I've been in law enforcement on the border. So I know what's
You've
going
seen
on.
both sides.
I know what's going on. From a mentality state, when they say things like that, I think they say it as, I'm not trying to harm America.
Yeah,
I'm just here to make some money and I'm going to go back. Well, that is harming America. 'Cause you're taking everything out of here to research. And I think they don't get that. Like, if you want to come to America, come to America. Do it legally. Nothing wrong with that.
That's right.
I don't care what part of the world you are. I don't care what color your skin is. Come to America, do it legally, and say, you know what? I want to come to America because I want to better myself.
Yeah.
I want to better the future of my family. And being here, I want to make sure that the country now that's going to open their arms to me and allow me in, I want that country to be better.
Oh, sure. Yeah, yeah.
But then you turn around and now, what are you saying by that? You're saying you want to make America great.
yeah.
And now,
Sure.
now you're using lines that maybe the media told you
Right.
this person that made it is a bad person.
Right, right.
So it unfortunately it's become an agenda by some media
Exactly.
people. More followers, more listeners, more
Yep.
money
Uh-huh.
from sponsors.
Yep.
And they made it a racial issue, and it has nothing to do with race. I say it all the time. Look, this country it's a melting pot. It is.
Absolutely.
But when you have a melting pot, that means you melt and unite together. You don't stay separated.
Right.
And there's a lot of individuals that will come to this country. They don't want to come to America. I hate to use the word assimilate, because when you use the word assimilate,
Right.
people are like, "Oh, that means you're succumbing to somebody."
Yeah, yeah.
No, that means you're embracing
Uh-huh.
the culture that you're going into. You don't have to forget your heritage.
Right, right.
You don't
Exactly.
have to forget your. I mean, people look at me and they think, well, he's in the border patrol, or he's talks on the news about border issues, and how is he? And then they see me, driving in my truck, and I got Mexican music playing, and it throws them off. It throws them off.
Yeah.
Wait a minute, you're supposed to not like. No, man, I'm not anti-Hispanic. I'm not anti.
Sure.
I'm Hispanic myself. I'm anti doing things illegally.
Yeah,
And I
yeah.
don't care where you come from. I don't care if you come from another country. I don't care if you're legally in this country. I don't care if you were born in this country. I am against people doing things illegally.
Yeah. So somebody said to me recently, hey, my Tia and Tio have been in Texas for 20 years. Is the new Trump administration going to affect them? They're not doing anything illegal. And I said, can you just rewind that? I said, are they nice people? Oh, yeah. My Tia, she bakes cookies and hands them out. And I said, they're not doing anything illegal, right? And they're like, no. And I'm like, well, wait a second. And they said, oh, but they're undocumented. I said, where did we get that term? I said, are they here legally or illegally? Well, illegally, but they're not doing anything wrong. I said, look in a mirror and say that to yourself. So everyone, correct me if I'm wrong on this,
Right.
Art, everyone that's here illegally is what the Supreme Court calls an illegal alien. They're not just undocumented.
Yes.
They are already committing a crime, whether they're as sweet as apple pie, aren't they?
And people hate the word alien.
Oh, alien.
But
yeah.
that's what's the legal term. The legal term is alien. There was a time when the new administration said, even to the agents that were working, you can't use the term illegal alien. I said, we'll change the law. Because the law says that's what the law
Sure.
documents. And you're right. I mean, you're already doing something illegal. If you've been here that long, what has prevented you from trying to get,
Exactly.
some kind of asylum or some kind of documentation correctly? And that's the problem. I got a better one on you, though. I went to a restaurant, and people recognize me when they see me in certain areas. And there was a young lady that came up to me, and she says, "Hey, I wanted to talk to you. I'm nervous with the new administration.
Uh-huh.
Are they gonna deport me? Are they gonna come to my house and deport me?" And I said, "Well, where are you from?" And she was from Durango, Mexico. And I said, "Okay, so why do you think they're gonna deport you?" And she says, I hear the news and the Univisions and all these other, television tells me." And I said, "Well, wait a minute. Are you legally in the United States?" And she says, "Well, I think so." And I said, "What do you mean you think so?" And she goes, "Well, I became a resident of the United States years ago when I was young. I derived that residency from my brother.
Oh, okay.
I said, so you're a resident? She goes, yes. I said, what? Actually, the term is resident alien.
Yeah,
right.
exactly.
So you're a legal resident alien in the United States. You have your own Social Security, all the documents. She goes, yes. Why would they deport you?
Yeah, yeah.
And she says, well, because the news said they were going to deport me. And I said, no, you're legally here. I mean, people need to understand that. There's so much conversations going on. There's so much misinformation. One of the things that I've argued till I've been blue in the face is the famous speech by President Trump where he said, that the people coming in were murderers and rapists and all that. I've taken the time to break it down for individuals to understand. So President Trump said, the majority of individuals that enter the country illegally. He didn't say everyone that enters illegally, though everyone that enters illegally is breaking the law, right?
That's correct.
But he said the majority that are criminals that have committed crimes like rape and drugs.
Wow.
So when he said that, people need to understand what the English language first and foremost, right?
Oh, yeah.
The majority doesn't mean everyone.
Right.
The majority just means a large part. It could be over 50%. And I can tell you from being on that border that when you would detain people during that time, close to 60% of those individuals that you were arresting had a past criminal history.
Oh, interesting.
So when you're saying the majority, 60% is the majority.
That's right.
He's not saying everyone.
That's right.
And he said the majority of those that enter illegally. But all of a sudden, somebody in their agenda flipped those words and said, Trump said that all Mexicans are this and that. And people just went with it. And when you break it down to individuals, some people don't want to hear it.
That's right.
So I think,
that's right.
I think, going back to the first question you've asked, and what can we do? We need to inform ourselves. We need to really think for ourselves, think outside the box, look at what's going on, see the reality, inform. I think we have a responsibility to see the law ourselves, know that you're a resident alien, you're not deportable.
That's right.
And at the same time, know that when you have grandma and grandpa, they may be fantastic people. I'm not saying they're not. And I'm not saying don't love your relatives.
Exactly.
But if you have a relative that's saying, I've been here for 20 years, and I've never cared to fix my immigration status.
Right.
Then you've got to start asking him, why?
Why
have you not bothered to fix it?
Yeah, it's like if you like it here so much, then do something about it.
Exactly.
If you're too proud to say, I'm going to become an American citizen or a resident or start that process of your green card, then maybe you should go back.
Here's one I hear sometimes from people, especially living in the Southwest. You'd hear people when I say, well, are you going to become a U.S. citizen? People that become residents, and say, well, I'm not so sure. I don't want to step on my Mexican flag. And
Interesting.
I said, step on the Mexican flag? What are you talking about? There's a misconception out there that I've heard one too many times where they think that when you become a citizen, part of the ceremony, I'm not even lying to you, is that you're actually stepping on your flag.
No.
And I'm thinking, where does this whole rumor mill evolve from?
Wow.
Just uninformed.
Do people just spin things in their brain and they believe what they want to believe?
It's a victim mentality. Let's face it. The last several years, I'd go as far back as say the last 10 years. A lot of individuals have come back with a victim mentality on things. And I think that's where we've lost touch of who we are as humans. People use the word woke a lot. Yeah. And I think there is no woke. It's more of like entering into more of a deep sleep. Because if you were woke, you would educate yourself instead of going by the education that somebody else in the media wants to push into you.
So let's talk about the media for a second. How is the media spinning the border? Are they pitting like the left against the right, common sense against crazy? Like, what's the media saying? And do you have any recommendations? I mean, I know you have a show. I'm very excited to see it. And I know you interview a ton of people, but where should we get our source of info, like moving 2025 and into the future?
I think realistically, you need to see both sides, right?
Okay, absolutely.
So I tell people, hey, by all means, don't just stick to one side.
Yeah.
Though, we've been indoctrinated to a point at our age, especially, where we're stuck on one area where we get our information more from. But you're able to see, look. The media, again, it's about selling. They want to sell the story, and you can't blame them for that. They gotta, go back to where their viewers are and who's bringing it. But lately, I think we've gotten some people that have gone so far left or so far right that the middle is what they're considering not sane. You hear it here all the time. Look, I have my own show. It's called The Green Line.
Okay.
And it's so the show does air on KNST. On a radio station in Tucson, but at the same time it's pushed forward. Now I do it on Spotify,
okay,
and I do it on iHeartRadio, and it's called The Green Line. Green Line being one word.
Green Line, okay.
Also, I put so much information on my official Instagram page, which is the official Art del Cueto page, right? I put all the information there because, and sometimes I get criticized. I've been criticized from both sides of the aisle because you hear the term, he's not a real Democrat, or he's not a real Republican. Okay. You hear that garbage all the time. And unfortunately, I think it's become even worse in the state of Arizona, where you have to be all in on one side or the other.
Exactly.
I've said it so many times in different groups. We have lost focus, and we have lost politicians because of our hatred towards somebody else and not understanding it.
Exactly.
There's political parties, I think, that we disagree on things 10%, but we agree on things 90%. But we're willing to forget the 90% we agree on, focus on that 10%, and then all of a sudden you have somebody in office that you disagree with them 90%.
Wow.
But you were too focused on that 10%, unfortunately. And I mean, it's hard. Arizona politics are so difficult to come back and forth on. And the media doesn't help.
Yeah.
We've seen the issues in Texas. I think the governor in Texas has done a fantastic job of allowing the media, allowing law enforcement, allowing everyone to come on, look at it.
Sure, yeah.
But I mean, this is what we have in Arizona a lot.
Absolutely.
We're in the middle of nowhere.
Yep.
And you have tribal land, and you have, national forests. So that's what's made it more difficult to be able to show what's happening. That's why what you're doing is fantastic. It's made it so much difficult in Arizona because the media says, I can go to Texas, rent a hotel, be 5 minutes from the border, take my picture, and I run the story.
Yeah.
Here, you have to stay in Phoenix. You have to stay in Tucson.
Yep.
And you have to drive over an hour at times to get to an area of the border in Nogales. Or if you want to go down to the reservation, you're looking at a 2.5-hour drive.
Interesting.
So the media says, why do I want to do that when I can just drive 10 minutes and do it here?
That's right. That's right.
But what happens is America doesn't know what's happening. And the reason I say that is some of your viewers perhaps have seen it. I know you have seen it. Several months ago, there was the famous video footage of 300 individuals that stormed the area in El Paso.
Yes.
It was 300. They stormed. They took down the fencing. That same weekend, we had over 3,000 in Arizona.
Wow.
On our border.
Wow.
But no one talked about the 3,000 because that was the focus point.
Yeah, it was.
And you said I do media everywhere, right? I don't care. I tell people all the time, come down, I'll show you what's going on. I'll do my dangest all the time to make the time because people need to realize what's happening here and people don't see what's happening here. And it's frustrating. It's very frustrating to me. And there was one group that came out here. I won't name who the media group was.
Perfect.
But they were out here and they said, look, we understand that the majority of all the gotaways, those are the people that are getting away, right, are here in Tucson. And I said, yes. I said, well, we want to film that. And I sat there and I started thinking, well, what do you want to film?
Yeah.
And they said, well, I need a visual. Is there a way that you can get us a visual of the gotaways?
Okay.
I said, if I could get you the gotaways, they wouldn't be gotaways.
Wow, that's
would be
strong.
gotchas.
That's strong.
But that's where the misconception is from the media.
Exactly.
They don't understand that point.
Yeah.
It's difficult, and it's difficult to explain it.
Sure.
I speak in all these groups. I go to all these different, events throughout the state. I go to California, Texas. I've spoken all over North Carolina. I've spoken all over the U.S. at these groups, and then I see these back to the retired guys and everything else that are charging to go speak at these events. And I think to myself, I believe in free speech so much that I speak for free.
Wow.
That's the difference.
That's awesome. It's just so fascinating. And, I think at the end of the day, the Americans want to be safe. They want to know where all those kids are. They want to know, why are all the drugs here? They want to know, do cartels really control the border? Like, for example, for us to go to Rocky Point, 4 hours, like, is that safe? You know, like, is there this misconception that, you know, we need to stay out of Mexico and that everyone coming in is terrible? But we're really in this interesting time right now that President Trump is taking over. And can you just speak real quickly, like, you have been with President Trump and the border czar and J.D. Vance and very influential people. What can we expect in the, you know, like President Trump says, by 2 o'clock on January 20th,
we're going to be ready.
We're ready. And so he says on day one, we're going to move on this. Like, should we be fearful? Like, is there going to be like civil unrest? Like, you know, some of us are going to be at the inauguration, and, you know, I think we're going to see some protests, but what should we expect as Americans?
We're going to see people that are misinformed.
Yeah.
At the same time, you're going to see groups that realize that they can make a profit off of the protests, you know, where they can, you know, go into businesses and steal and take whatever they want for profit. So I think we're going to see that, unfortunately, especially in D.C. during the inauguration. But I think what we can expect is, obviously, they've said from day one we're ready to roll. One of the things that I know is going to stop is catch and release.
Okay.
And catch and release is a bad thing. People don't understand that. Look, when you're driving down the freeway and you see a police officer, you slow down. People speed. They slow down because they don't want to get pulled over and get a ticket.
Yep.
If you knew you weren't going to get pulled over and you knew you weren't going to get a ticket, would you slow down? You probably wouldn't. You'd keep speeding.
Yeah.
So what happens if you have every single individual on I-10 speeding at all times? You're going to have more accidents. You're going to have disasters.
Absolutely.
You're going to have problems. And that's where we're at with our immigration, with catch and release, is that it's been so open where people can come across, ask for asylum, and just get released. And they don't have to report to a court date because so many of them have come across for 5-6 days, 5-6 years from now, right? So when that happens, the criminal cartels, again, who control the border, they've utilized that as their own way to make more money. So what they do is they control who comes across. They have a group that they realize, hey, if I bring you across, you're going to get released. You fall under that catch and release. But I have, you know, 100, 200 other individuals that I know are not going to be able to say asylum and get released because they may have past criminal history, or because they're bringing drugs in the United States. So what do is they flood one area with 300-400 people. Now the resources of Border Patrol and other law enforcement are there, and they're stuck trying to process and trying to transport. And as we said, the border from the processing facility sometimes is 2-3 hours away. So now they're stuck there. That gives the drug cartels the opportunity to start bringing drugs in another area, to have other individuals come across. That's where the gotaways from. That's why the gotaway numbers are so high in Arizona, because it's more remote. So they're the ones that are controlling the border. So people tell me, is it safe to go to Mexico? I don't think it is. Because you're going into a narco state right now. You're not going into an area where you control anything, where you can call the police and say, hey, I'm getting extorted. Because sometimes it's law enforcement themselves that are involved in it. Now, on the same note, not everyone coming into the United States is bad.
That's correct.
But definitely going into Mexico right now, it's very unsafe. You know, I have friends and family down as far as Culiacan, Sinaloa, which is the capital of Sinaloa. They've been sequestered for 5-6 months. People don't talk about that. The media doesn't talk about that. I have friends that I've spoken to that's saying that the drug wars are so bad over there that they're killing people every day. In big cities and when you look at Culiacan, it's a city like Tucson. It's an industrial city. They're killing people, and between the drug wars, and they're not even allowing them to come pick up the bodies. So there's bodies that have been laying in areas of Sinaloa for 4 or 5 days.
And that's making a statement to everyone else, right?
So that's how bad it is. And the people that live there, they know they can't leave. And once it becomes dark, at dark, they got to stay inside because it's become so bad. So that's how dangerous it is. And the last thing you need is some young punk kid drugged out that wants to make a name for himself. And that's why it's dangerous to go over there right now. You don't want to fall into that area.
Exactly. So you talk about kids, and there's just a glaring question I'd love your perspective on. Where are all the missing children? What do we have? 350,000, or where are these
What
kids?
they know about, right?
That's the
what the
number
problem
that's
is.
out there.
So the way it's worked is, and I can tell you firsthand knowledge, we've had a lot of of kids that come across, obviously illegally through the fence.
Yep.
But they're unaccompanied.
Yeah.
So they're already been unaccompanied. They've already separated themselves from their family, or their family has separated themselves from them. So when these individuals come across, you detain them. If they're under the age of 18, they're considered a minor. Now, I can tell you, and it sounds horrible, but some of these individuals that are saying they're 17 years old look older than you and me.
Interesting.
But you got to take their word for it because they've got no documents.
The papers.
Right? So those individuals get taken in, they get fingerprinted. There's not going to be a record of them because they've never been to America. Mm-hmm. And then now they get turned over to another agency, ICE. ICE, then, if they don't have the bed space, that's when these people like Casas Alitas and Southwest Keys, which are non-government organizations, they get involved through government funding.
Sure.
So it's still taxpayer money.
Yep.
People need to understand that. They'll take them into their place, and then now they're in charge of trying to find out where their family member is in America. But those people don't have the database that the federal agencies have. And they're not going to call you. So you're in Border Patrol or ICE. They're not going to call you and say, hey, can you come make sure? So they get presented with documents. And, a lot of times they could be fake documents.
Sure.
They'll fly these children to the area where this parent is, or this relative that's taking care of the child says, hey, he's my child. And unfortunately, they get released to those people.
Do they really? Okay.
But it's not Border Patrol that's doing it. It's not ICE that's doing it.
Okay.
It's these non-government organizations that are funded through tax.
Sure.
And that's where it's unfortunate. But then, I mean, it's easy to turn around and blame the government because it just makes it easier, right? You want to have a face to blame. Sure. But unfortunately, I've said it many times, I think you need to find out first and foremost who their parents are. Child abandonment is child abandonment.
Wow.
Okay. People need to get charged for abandoning their children.
Yeah.
And people need to get charged because they've turned their children over to criminal organizations. So I think they need to get charged for endangerment of a child as well. And it's rough to say. It's rough to say. But we need to find out where these children are. But at the same time, you need to find out anyone and everyone that's been involved, and they need to be charged for the crime they've committed.
And that just takes so much labor and financial resources and time, and it's almost impossible.
So
are these kids being trafficked?
Yes,
there's money. There's money in it, right?
There's money in it. You've seen individuals that have come across with children under the age of 14 because under the age of 14 they don't fingerprint them.
Okay.
So what happens is you have even families. I mean, there's good parents and there's bad parents. There's families and parents on the Mexican side that will rent their child.
Oh my gosh.
So they'll rent. So let's say you're coming and you're a male by yourself. Mm-hmm. And you're coming into the U.S. and you realize that you could ask for asylum, but because you're a male and you don't have anything to tie you, they might send you back. So what they do is, on the border, they'll have these children that family members and parents, they will rent that child to you for $400. So you give me $400 and you can take my child, cross that border, tell them it's your child, and the kid will be trained to say you're the dad or uncle or whatever, realizing that because you're with a child that's accompanied by you, the child cannot stay in custody longer than 21 days.
Okay.
It's called the Flores ruling.
Okay.
So it's a court order. So now, because there's so many people like you doing it, renting these children, you're going to get released. So once you get released with the child, just send that child back.
Yep.
And let somebody else rent them next month. It doesn't care.
Wow.
That's how horrible this system is. And who do you blame? You look at it and people can say, oh, Trump is horrible. You know what? All this is happening because the Biden administration didn't have laws that they wanted to keep pushing. You have to have laws. At the end of the day, if you don't have laws, you and me will follow the law.
Yeah.
But if you get rid of those laws, you and me will still follow the law. But the criminals that wouldn't follow the law regardless, now they have the keys to do whatever they want within chaos.
Wow.
Because there's no consequence.
Wow.
If there's no consequence, you don't have a conscience.
Wow. Well, Art, thank you so much for your time. This is just like overwhelming, but it appears that good things are coming, right?
Good things are coming.
Like we're going to follow a law,
because
right?
we're going to follow the law, and I think the viewers out there, I want them to understand, as I've said it, illegal is not a race. It has nothing to do with that. The agency has reported that they've arrested people from 168 different countries.
Wow.
That's a big opener. The criminal cartels operate in over 160 countries. It's not like it used to be back in the 80s and the 90s. It's been $1 billion industry. The drug smugglers make billions and billions. And you know where they're sending their kids to school? Yale, Harvard,
wow.
Ivy League schools in America. So they're learning a business sense.
Sure.
They're getting communication with people in China, with people in Spain, with people in Africa. They're making this big link around the world so they can further grow their criminal enterprise. And it comes at the expense of the American public and the American kids. And it's difficult even more for kids, especially kids that are in school. I say that, look, maybe some adults are beyond saving, but the children are not.
Absolutely.
And we need to educate our kids.
Absolutely.
We can't blind them. We can't say, this person is bad because what I heard somebody else say in the media. You need to research it, because at the end of the day, we're responsible for educating those kids, and we have to give them a good education. Stop telling these kids it's about race and start saying, hey, it's about consequences, and it's about following the law.
And common sense, right?
And that's what it comes back to. And the drug smugglers, they don't care who mom and dad voted for. They're making money, and they don't care, what their children are doing. You have very, very bad individuals. Like you said, at the beginning of the show, I've worked on the border for over 20 years. Before that, I worked maximum security prisons in the state of Arizona.
Wow.
There is evil out there.
Yeah.
And we can try to protect our kids, but part of that protection is letting them know there's evil out there, and you need to be careful of that.
That's right. That's right. Fantastic. Thank you, Art, so much.
Thank you so much.
You show again,
The Green Line.
Green Line.
On Spotify and iHeartRadio.
There you go.
And
Please
follow
check
me
it
on
out.
Instagram. Follow me on Instagram at the official Art Del Cueto page. And click subscribe on this show at the same time.
Yeah, that's right.
And go ahead and share it. Subscribing, so you got two things. One, subscribe. Two, share it. Knowledge is power. Remember that.
That's right. Thank you, Art. You're
Thank you so
amazing.
much.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.